we're going to look at the format of the listening test, look at what's probably the best bit of advice we can give you is how to predict what you have to listen for from looking at the questions and the context. We'll do a practice involving letters and numbers, a little dictation for you, because in the IELTS listening test, as in real life, you have to listen for specific pieces of information, and actually quite often these are both letters and numbers, maybe names of people, that kind of thing. So it's based on sort of real life situations, survival skills, so we'll practice that. We'll also do a practice of a completion question. I'll share with you some tips for listening and hopefully be able to answer a few of your outstanding questions at the end and tell you about some of our useful resources. So let's start with the format of the IELTS listening test. Please, could you put into the chat box anything you know about the format of the IELTS listening test? How many sections are there? How many questions are there? How long does it last? How many times do you hear the recording? What do you know about the IELTS listening test? Please tell me in the chat. Okay, yep, so there are 4 parts, you have 30 minutes, there's 40 questions, and if you're saying I have no idea, then hopefully you'll have lots to learn today. And somebody said, yes, the recording is heard only once. So some of you know a lot about it, and let's just quickly review it. So there are 4 parts to the IELTS listening test. There are a total of 40 questions. It's approximately 30 minutes of listening that you do, but you hear each recording only once. So it's a bit like real life. You only hear what people say once. You don't hear, they don't repeat themselves. Well, I sometimes do repeat myself, but generally we try not to. Each question is worth 1 mark. If you're taking the paper version of the IELTS test, after listening for 30 minutes, you will have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. If you're taking the computer-delivered IELTS, you will have been putting your answers directly onto the computer as you listen, so you will have only 2 minutes to check your spelling and things like that. And in the paper-based IELTS, you write all of your answers in pencil. You should know that before each listening text in the IELTS listening test, you're given about 30 seconds to look through the questions that you have to answer before you listen to the text. And it's really important that you use that time well. So I'm just going to do a quick review then. So there are 4 parts to the IELTS listening test, and it gets more difficult as it goes along. So part 1 is usually the easiest, and part 4 is going to be the most difficult. And there are 10 questions in each section. In terms of the context, the type of listening that you're being asked to do in part 1 and part 2 of the IELTS, it's the type of listening that you will experience. It's the kind of things that you'll need to do if you go to live or study in an English-speaking environment. Things like asking for information, booking tickets, completing forms, etc. Parts 3 and 4 of the IELTS listening are more academic. Part 3 is a discussion between a number of people, anything between 2 and 4 people, and it's rather like a university seminar or tutorial group. So they'll be discussing something in a more academic context or discussing a project that they're working on. And part 4 also is replicating what happens in universities, well, English-speaking universities and many other universities. So it's listening to an academic lecture and there's only one speaker. So it's useful to know what type of listening it is, so that therefore you know what type of things you should be listening to practice for it. So let's look in a bit more detail at parts 1 and 2 of the IELTS listening. So these are based on the types of ordinary interactions you'd need to have if you're living in an English-speaking environment, and they're related to basic survival skills. So imagine that you are living in an English-speaking country. What do you think are the types of everyday things that you would need to do? Could I ask you to put some ideas into the chat box, please? So what sort of things? You might have to listen, might be an inquiry, someone saying going to a restaurant, renting a flat, asking for the address, directions. Yes, exactly. These are exactly the types of things that you would need to do if you were living in an English-speaking environment. And they are also the types of things that come up in parts 1 and 2 of the IELTS listening. So you had lots of very good ideas, some of which were the same of mine and some of which were different, but this is just a sample. So you might be renting somewhere to live, getting information about courses, trying to get a part-time job if you're a student somewhere, perhaps opening a bank account, getting travel information, buying tickets, etc. Someone said arranging a night out in a restaurant. Sheena, yes, exactly. These are the sort of ordinary types of situations that come up, and buying tickets for events. So the first thing we want to do is when we open an IELTS listening paper, we want to try and work out which of these everyday contexts we're dealing with, and from that try to predict what are the sorts of things that we're going to hear, the sorts of things that are going to be talked about on the listening. So we look at the first set of questions, try to work out what the situation is, and think about what are people going to be talking about. So looking at this example, so what's it going to be about? What's the context? Could you tell me what's the context? Looking at these 2 questions, what is the context of the listening that's going to come? Anastasia's saying it's about a job. Yes, Sophia's saying it's Penny's job. And Knight is saying it's in a clothes store. Yeah, so we know it's about a job. So what are the sort of topics that we would expect people to talk about if they're having this conversation? We know it's going to be about a job. It looks like a new job because question 2 says the name of the section Penny will be working in. So it's telling us it's in the future. So what are the kinds of things that you think will be talked about? We're going to put up poll question 3 now, and I'd like you to answer that, please.
I'm very sorry, there's a temporary problem with the poll questions, but Louisa will read the question out and you can answer in the chat box.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So our poll question isn't working. So what are the kind of things that we expect this? So Helen Giwe is saying explaining what kind of work to do. Yep. So the kind of things, do you think they'll, just answer me yes or no in the chat box. Do you think they'll talk about the salary? Well done, Intel. Yes, it is a department store. Yes, they will. Are they likely to talk about Penny's hobbies? Would that happen when you go to talk to your boss? Gabriella, no, exactly. Nicholas, no. What about the working hours? That's basic information, isn't it? If you're starting a new job, you need to know working hours. Family. Will they ask her about her family? Oh, look, and we now have a poll question. So if you'd like to answer in the poll question, please do it that way. So no, they wouldn't normally talk about the family. And we've got 3 more there, the duties and the holidays. Yes, Anne-Reen, you're saying they'll talk about her day off and the leave. Yes, I think they will. Okay, so if you can see the poll question, just answer that poll question, please. Which of the topics do we think would be talked about in this context? And could we see the results, please? Yes, so your favourite was working days and hours. That's very obvious. 25% of you thought the salary. Yes, I agree. The duties. These, possibly the holidays if it relates to the job. So, yeah, you get the idea. So this is what we mean when we say we need to predict from the context. So we've predicted it's a nice context, this, and those the sort of things that they'll be talking about. Before we move on, I'd just like to make a point about multiple choice questions, which is what this is. So it usually, or very often, all of the options are mentioned. So if you look at the text at the bottom of the page, you'll see, so question 1, there is a ladies' dress shop, a department store, or a children's clothes shop. Excuse me, a children's clothes shop. So if we look at the little text there, they say that they're putting her in the dress department. So they mention dress, but it's not a ladies' dress shop, it's a dress department. And then they also mention the children's section and saying, oh, is it next to the children's section? And then they talk about the name. So you can see that this happens very often in the IELTS listening, that if it's a multiple choice question, they are going to talk about, they will mention all 3 of the options. So you have to be very careful to identify exactly what it is you need to listen for. And be aware that that happens. So don't you hear clothes, don't immediately assume that's the answer. So, and yes, the answers are, number 1 is B, well done, Mai, and number 2 is C, well done, Sabreen Mohammed. So, moving on. So what we need to, first we've already looked, we've predicted and thought about the context, and now we're going to sort of take it down to another level and look at the individual questions and try to work out what sort of information we think will fit in the gap. So in looking at this together, if we look at the line that says breaks, it says 1 hour for lunch and coffee breaks. So what sort of information do you think we will get in that to answer question 3? So Solomia's saying a number, maybe the number of coffee breaks. Catalina's saying the time, yes, how much time. Areli's saying as well the amount of time. Yep, the amount of time for the coffee breaks. So what do you think this will be? Zahia, you're saying the duration. Yes, that okay, good one. So Pooja's saying perhaps 10 minutes. Yeah, so this is what we have to do, because then when we listen and we hear something, we make the connection because we know we're listening for the duration of the coffee break. So now what I'd like you to do is get your piece of paper and write the numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the piece of paper, and write next to them what you think is a possible answer for each of those gaps. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do that, and then we'll check. So Look at the words either side of the gap. Think about what type of word you need. Think about what type of information, logically, what is potentially going to be the answer to those questions. Karen's suggesting 6% for number 6. Yes, oh, sorry, Karen, it's a percentage. Yes, you're right, exactly. Okay, so if you've done that now, we're not going to actually listen to this little dialogue, but we are going to check the answers. So for number 3, the answer is 15 minutes or 15-minute. Those are both acceptable answers. But if you put an S on minute and made it minutes, that is not correct, because in this case, 15-minute is actually an adjective, and adjectives in English don't agree. They don't take a plural. So you have to be very careful. 15-minute is a bit like we talk about a 5-year-old child or a 2-hour flight. And that's the same. It's actually an adjective, so it doesn't take a plural. So number 4, yes, ilisanmi. It is the 3rd or the 3rd year. Both of those are possible. Number 4, we've got the 1st Tuesday, or you can write it with the number and the ST. Somebody's asking, why is it an adjective? Because it's describing the length of the coffee breaks. So number 4, 3rd. Number 5, the staff training is held on the 1st Tuesday of every month. And Tagrid's guessing that the staff discount is 30%. No, but you were close. It's actually 25%. So we've now looked at 2 types of questions that come up in IELTS listening. So we've looked at the first one we looked at was a multiple choice with those 3 options. But there are lots of other types of questions in IELTS. So which other question types do you know about? Can you put your answers in the chat box? Good, Sarah said note completion, yes. And Ladan said completion, Nadia. Yeah, we have sometimes summary completions. Florence has suggested maps and labeling. Debbie's suggesting a flow chart. Yep, filling the gaps. Okay, well, I think you've got most of them. So we've got the one that we've seen. We have matching questions. We also have plan, map, or diagram labeling questions. Okay, Frederica is saying true, false, not given. No, we do not have true, false, not given questions in IELTS listening. We only have them in IELTS reading. But we do have in the listening form completion, notes completion, table completion, etc. And of course, the sentence completion. So it's important, if you're going in for this test, that you are familiar with all these different types of questions that are going to come up in the listening test. And we have a lot of practice tests, both on our Take IELTS site and on our IELTS.org site and on our IELTS Prep app. So go in and make sure that you know what these different questions are, and you've practiced all of them, because the more familiar you are with the test, in a way that helps it to be easier. It certainly helps you not to get quite so nervous. So moving on, we're going to now do a dictation of letters and numbers. So the first thing I would like you to do is to write the numbers 1 to 10 down the left-hand side of your piece of paper. So write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a column down the left-hand side of your piece of paper. Are you ready now to do the dictation? Let me know in the chat. Are you ready for the dictation? Yes, Mary Joyce, thank you, and Camillo. So I'm going to dictate these and you write them down. So number 1 is a place in Somerset in the UK. It's called Frome, but you spell that F-R-O-M-E. Number 2 is a name, a family name, and the name is Spaxman, and you spell that S-P-A-C-K-S-M-A-N. And number 3 is a place in the UK, Loughborough, that you may have heard about, and you spell that L-O-U-G-H-B-O-R-O-U-G-H. That was a long one. Number 4 is a place in Australia that you may or may not have heard of called Auckland, and you spell that A-U-C-K-L-A-N-D, Auckland. Well done, Eliza. And number 5 is a large number, so it's 315,000. Number 6, a smaller number, 316. Number 7 is another number, 970. Number 8, another number, so that's 15.75. And I'd just like to apologise to all the New Zealanders who are here for having said that Auckland was in Australia. Obviously, it isn't. It's very hot in Paris today, and that's probably why I'm making silly mistakes like that. So number 8 is 15.75. Number 9 is 17%. And number 10 is 14. So if you've finished writing them down, now check your answers with the slide. So you can see them there. Number 5 for the 315,000, you can either do 3 numbers and a comma and 3 zeros, or you can just write the 6 numbers, or you can do 315, leave a space and put 000. They are all correct answers. So tell me how many, oh, Ahmad got them all right. Anybody else? Well done, Fatima. 10 out of 10. Ariel, you missed number 5. Don't worry, you can always go back and do it again. Well done, Ramnik. So it's also a real life skill that you're going to need, whether you're studying or working in an English-speaking country. You need to be able to recognize the sounds of letters and numbers in English. It sounds very simple, but actually, we probably haven't thought about it since we were in primary school. So do make sure that you are familiar with the sounds of the letters and the numbers. And if you go on to Google, if you're not sure how a letter's pronounced, you can find on Google, you can listen to the letters and do things like that. So just make sure you're familiar with that. So now we are actually going to do a little bit more of listening practice. If you look at this slide, this is the sentence completion type of question from the IELTS listening. And with this type of question, it's very, very important that your answer that you put in that gap, it has to fit grammatically with the sentence, with the words that are around it. So if we look at the gap in sentence number 18, what type of word would go into that gap. So we're going to put up poll question 4, possibly. Yes, very good. Some people are answering in the chat. So looking at the gap in the first sentence, to show you're an official visitor, you have to wear the provided. Is that going to be a verb, a noun, an adjective, or an adverb? And just choose one of those in the poll. And could we see the results, please? Well done. 85% of you got it right in the poll. Yes, it's going to be a noun. We know it's a noun because we've got the. So we've got the, which is the definite article, which is usually followed by a noun. And we know it's something that is provided. So we know we've got to hear a noun in that. We've got to hear a noun to fill that gap. So now what I'd like you to do is make sure that you've got the numbers 18, 19, and 20 written down on your piece of paper, and look at the other 2 questions and try to decide what type of word is needed to fill the other 2 gaps. And then we'll do the listening. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to look at question 19, sentence 19 and sentence 20, and think what type of word needs to go in those gaps. And somebody's already guessing the answers, Amos. Anyway, yes, this is what we need to do. We can predict some of the answers in IELTS by just using our common sense. Anyway, are you ready to listen to the text now? Tell me in the chat box if you are ready. Okay, Wafa is ready. Good. Anybody else? Malena's ready. Anusha's ready. Pooja's okay, good. So now let's listen.
We also hope that you'll have received your welcome pack. In it, you should find 2 parking tickets for yourself and anyone assisting you, an armband to indicate that you are an official visitor, one of our brilliant yellow badges with a new festival logo, a festival program, and several sheets of information that we'd ask you to study carefully before the event. Please could you note that all setting up of stalls, displays and so on should be completed by 9:30 a.m. and that unfortunately we won't be able to allow any vehicles to enter the festival area after that time. Yes, it's a big site, but even a few vehicles parked in the wrong place can block the paths. With crowds of people, and we are expecting several thousand, this can merely be a nuisance, but if there's an emergency and access for an ambulance is blocked, the situation will become not just annoying, but also dangerous. And don't forget, it could be your mother or your child who needs help. Several exhibitors and craftspeople have asked us if any provision can be made for overnight storage of tables, chairs and display items, rather than having to take them home and bring them back again. We're pleased to say that a limited amount of space has been made available in the building near the main gate. You'll be issued with a yellow ticket to reclaim your property, similar to the red parking ticket, so do check you bring the right one. But please understand that this is entirely at your own risk, as we can take no responsibility for items lost or damaged. I think that's all I have to say at this point, but thank you all for your attention.
And thank you, Sarah. So that was the listening text. So now let's have a look at the answers. So number 18, the answer is armband. And that could be written either as one word or as 2 words, as it is here. Number 19 is an ambulance or ambulances. So if you use a singular noun like this, you need an article for the sentence to be grammatically correct. So that's why if you can say cars blocking paths could prevent access by ambulances in an emergency, if you use a plural, you don't need the article. But if you use the singular, you have to put the article there in order to get the point. And for the third one there, you have to show your yellow ticket or yellow tickets. So hopefully that's given you an idea about how to do the sentence completion questions. But just remember, very important always to check the instructions, which here say no more than 2 words, so maximum 2 words, and check that what you write fits grammatically into the sentence. So, and moving on, we're going to look a little bit at what happens at the end of the IELTS listening test and some other tips. So when you finish the listening, you have 10 minutes to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet, and it looks a bit like this, but you just need to be really, really careful that you put the correct answer in the correct box. So make sure that you put the answer to number 3 in the box for the answer to number 3. Again, it sounds like a really simple thing, but you would be surprised how many times people can make a mistake like this. And if possible, actually download a PDF of the answer sheet from the IELTS.org website and practice using it when you're doing the practice test. So you become familiar with the answer sheet, you understand how it works. That's one less stress for you if you get nervous in the test. Remember that the recordings are played only once, as in real life. So make sure that you're always looking ahead. Always be looking at the questions about the listening that's about to start, thinking about what's the context, predicting like we did, thinking of the type of information that you expect to hear in that context, and then looking in detail at the questions and thinking, is it a noun? Is it an adjective? All of this will help you to be ready when you hear the listening text. In the paper-based IELTS, you use a pencil, which is usually provided at the test centre to write your answers. You should answer all the questions because there's no negative marking. So that means if you have the wrong answer, you don't get that point. But you don't lose any points because you've got a wrong answer, just you don't gain the points. So this means don't leave gaps. Even if you didn't hear what was said, look at the question, take a guess, because it's better to guess than leave something blank. And so, you know, after each listening text in the test, you have 30 seconds to check your answers. Look ahead all the time, predict, think about the context, and think what you need to listen for. And don't worry about your spelling while you're doing the listening, but when you transfer your answers, be really careful about your spelling and your grammar and make sure that it's correct. So another question that people often ask, so should I write in capital letters or can I write in lowercase? So let's look at an example of this. So the answer is Mr. Right, and I must say, personally, I'm still waiting for Mr. Right to come along, and I hope when he gets here, he won't be a tarantula. But anyway, the answer to this question is Mr. Right. So look at the 4 options there. Which of them would be correct? So could we have the poll question, please? That's poll question 5, please. And just say which of these answers would be correct. They all say Mr. Right, that Mr. Right who's coming soon into my life, but which of them is written correctly? Well done, Farhad. Yes, and Philippe. Yep. Okay, can we see the results, please? Well done. Nobody fell for number 2, and only very small percentage, somebody wondered if number 3 could be correct. So basically, the correct answer is number 1 is correct. You can write it all in capital letters. And if your handwriting's difficult to read, that might be a good strategy. So Mr. Right, number 1 is correct, and number 4 is correct because Mr., Mrs., Miss, Ms., they all need a capital M for the Mr. part. And when we write somebody's family name, we have to put a capital letter at the beginning of it. So 1 and 4 are right, and 2 and 3 are, and this is the same, doesn't matter, it'll be the same in the computer-based, computer-delivered test as in the paper test. So you need to spell things properly and capitalize things properly. So, and writing everything all in capital letters is actually quite a good technique, because then you don't need to think about things like, does January have a capital J? The other thing to remember is to be very careful to check the instructions. So let's look at these instructions. They say, write no more than 2 words and or a number. So we know that that's what our answer has to consist of. No more than 2 words and or a number. So looking at those 6 options there, which of those would be a correct answer to that question? We're going to do this as a poll question. So could you put up poll question 6, please? So based on these instructions, which say write no more than 2 words and or a number, which of these answers could be correct? Yes, Diksha, Kawal, yes. Yep. Okay, could we have a look at the answers? Could we look at the results of the poll? Okay, good. So not many people made a mistake, a very few people. So craftsman, it's 1 word, it's fine. 60 local craftsmen, like it's written in number 2, no, that's not correct, because we've been told we can write no more than 2 words. So that's 3 words, so it's not going to be correct. Number 3 is fine. A lot of you got that. Number 4, it's the same problem. Hardly anybody went for it. But again, instructions say no more than 2 words. So the answer cannot be 3 words. Number 5 is the same as number 2, but using the number. So that's correct. And of course, the answer could just be a number. So well done. Most of you got that. So just keep reminding yourself you need to check the instructions and make sure that you've used the correct number of words or letters and no more. So looking at another tip, if you like, this is that the question always dictates the answer. So here the question says the best place to meet is space. So you know you're listening for a place. On the recording, you hear someone saying, so the most convenient place to meet would be in the cafeteria. So what will the answer be? Okay, Sofrin, you've put in cafeteria. Almost. Okay, Fatima's put the cafeteria. Umida's put cafeteria. Be careful. All right, in the cafeteria, Sofrin, yes. All right, so the answer, it can be either in the cafeteria with the in, or it can be the cafeteria. We can write no more than 3 words. That means we could write 1 word, 2 words, or 3 words. But in order to be grammatically correct, we've got there a singular noun, cafeteria, so it needs the article. So the correct answer will need the. The in, you do or don't need it. It doesn't matter. If you put it in, it's correct. If you don't put it in, it's correct. But you do need the article with the cafeteria. Okay, so a little thing, remember about multiple choice questions like the first one we looked at. So if the instructions say choose the correct letter, A, B, or C, A is spring, B is summer, and C is winter. Which of the two answers is correct? Yes, Sarah. Yes, Anastasia. Of course. Yes, Sofrin. Yeah, so we're told to write the letter. We only need to write the letter. So let's do what the instructions say, basically. Also, you might make a mistake in your spelling if you're in a hurry and you're trying to write the word, and it takes longer. So if it says choose the correct letter, just put the letter on the answer sheet. It's much quicker and much safer. Saves you time and no risk of spelling mistakes. The other tip is that you should prepare for the questions by underlining the key words. This helps you to focus your mind when you're in the test room. So the key words here, we know we're listening for information about the town square, and we're listening for who built it, who was it built by. So this way we know what the information is we need before we listen to the text. And the last tip is watch out for distractors, because in real life and in the IELTS listening test, people do correct themselves. And I'm sure I corrected myself this afternoon when I was talking. So we say something and then afterwards we correct it. So this happens in life, and it also happens in the IELTS listening test. So we've got, the question says, what is Linda's date of birth? 25th. On the recording, which we're going to listen to now.
Just one more thing, your date of birth. Just a moment.
Look, I'm afraid you haven't copied it down correctly. I was born on the 25th of September, 1990.
What have I written? Oh yes, I see now I've got the 25th of the eighth month, but that would mean August.
Okay, so tell us, what's the answer? What is Linda's date of birth? What goes in that gap? Well, Anastasia, Zineb, Sofrin, yep. Okay, so it's September. So this is an example of the type of thing that happens in life and in IELTS listening. So if you think you've heard the answer, just keep listening for what to make sure that the information isn't corrected later on. So keep listening, don't assume that it won't be corrected. And there's a poll question there for you if you'd like to answer that poll question. Linda's date of birth, and well done, 94% of you who got it correct. It was September. If you didn't get it correct, when you get the link, do listen to it again, watch the webinar again, and make sure that you understand why the correct answer is September. So moving on, just to sum up things that you need to remember. So you need to predict about the situation. So look at the context, look at the questions and think, okay, this is an everyday situation. Which type is it? What's the context? What do I expect people to be talking about? You should read the questions really carefully and underline keywords to focus yourself on the exact information you need to hear. You should predict from the questions themselves the type of word or information that you need to listen for, whether it's a noun or not. Be really, really careful about following the instructions and using the correct number of words or numbers for your answers in completion questions. And remember, the instructions change for every set of questions in the IELTS listening. So do keep checking them. Watch out for those distractors, people correcting themselves. Make sure that you've practiced all the different question types, and don't just do one practice test, do a few. And also, because IELTS is an international test, you're going to come up against a range of native speaker accents. There's going to be Americans and British people and people from Australia, etc. So make sure that you're listening to things which feature a range of native speaker accents. So either go on to sort of Australian news channels or American, you know, just find something so that you tune your ear into the different accents. So that's about it from me. I'm going to try and answer some of your questions for a couple of minutes before telling you about some of the resources that we have. So I'm just trying to get that Q&A to open. And
okay, we seem to have a technical problem and we have temporarily lost connection with Louisa. I think she might be back now.
thank you, Layla. Yes,
okay.
I got back in. I'll just try again to open the Q&A. Or maybe somebody could...
I can read the questions for you.
I can see them. So Ravi Kiran, you're saying after part 4, no time is provided to check all the answers. No, Ravi Kiran, after part 4, you'll be given some time to check your answers to part 4, but you won't get time to check things from the earlier ones. And Nitisha's asking how to approach maps. They're very difficult. Well, with maps, just make sure that you have a look at the map, work out where the direction is. Normally in a map, north is going up to the top of the page. So look for where the orientation is. Where is north? And, you know, look at where the questions are organized around the map or the plan and think about where are they going to start. So, is it possible to underline words in the computer delivered test, Federica? You can't actually underline the words in the computer delivered test, but you can highlight them. Ariel says sometimes the answer's already been skipped in the listening and you're still listening, how to avoid that. Ariel, if you've done very well, if you've really predicted about all the answers that are coming up in the next section, don't worry if you've missed an answer, because you should know that you're listening for 3 or 4 or 5 different pieces of information. Listen out, keep listening out. When you hear the next one, you'll know where you are. There's nothing you can do about it if you miss it, but you're not expected to get 40 out of 40 anyway. In the computer-based test, Katerina's asking, will you have a paper copy of the questions? No, Katerina, the questions will be on the screen. You won't have a paper copy. Where in the case of paper-based, the candidate is given 10 minutes to transfer or check answers? Yes. Ravi Kiran, I don't really see what the question is, but yes, in the paper-based IELTS, you do get 10 minutes to transfer and check your answers, all within the 10 minutes. Norbert, you're clarifying about the no negative marking. Yep, so any answers that you get correct get you a point, and that's how it's marked. Palak Sharma's asking, how can you register for upcoming webinars? You just go to our Take IELTS website, and you can register there for upcoming webinars. So what do we have to bring for the computer delivered test? Jamil Imad's asking. Jamil, the only thing you'll need to bring is the ID that you use to register for the test, and if you want to, you can bring a clear bottle of water with you into the test, but that's all you need to bring. And I'm going to try and do one more. Oh, that's an interesting question. Promise is asking, what's the pass rate? Actually, Promise, IELTS isn't a pass or fail test. So people need different band scores. So if you take the IELTS test, you'll get a test report form that tells you that you've got a specific band score. So it's not like you pass or fail. James is just confirming, yes, it's a total time for the listening test is 30 minutes of listening and then 10 minutes transfer time. Jamil Hannah's asking, does the computer test have autocorrection? No, I'm sorry, Jamil, it doesn't. And it doesn't have a spell checker or a grammar checker, because that would sort of defeat the purpose. Okay, I'm going to quickly talk to you about some of our resources. And while I'm doing that, it'd be really nice if you've enjoyed the webinar or you found it useful, could you go over to the chat box and just tell us what you did like about the webinar, apart from the occasional technical glitches? Must be because it's such a hot day today. So the first site that we would recommend you go to is our takeielts.org site. And there you'll find a lot of materials. You'll find the free practice tests, and you'll find other materials that will help you to prepare for IELTS. And we also would say, if you had a question today and we didn't manage to answer it, though I know the Avengers have been doing a fantastic job on the Q&A today, but if we didn't get to your question, if you join our Take IELTS official Facebook page, we have regular sessions there with IELTS experts, so they will be able to answer your question if we didn't get to it today. For anyone who's thinking about taking computer-delivered IELTS, please make sure that you take a free computer-delivered familiarization test, either on our Take IELTS website or on IELTS.org, not just for the content of the test, but so that you understand how the system works, how the questions are laid out, etc. And also from Take IELTS, you can get access to Road to IELTS. This is the British Council's material to help people prepare for IELTS. Again, there's free material there, more practice tests, interactive activities, and hints and tips for different question types. If you've got a little bit of time before you're taking your test, the British Council offers a free online IELTS preparation course on FutureLearn. So that's completely free, and it's a MOOC, so that's a massive open online course. It's hosted on FutureLearn. So if you think you need a bit more help preparing for your IELTS test, please, go there and join that course. That'll give you 3 weeks work. There's 3 weeks worth of work to do. There's also our IELTS Prep app, which I mentioned. There you have, again, instant access to free IELTS practice tests, grammar tips, exercises, and other things that might be useful. One of the key things in IELTS is vocabulary. So if you think that it would be helpful to build your vocabulary, we've got our IELTS Word Power app and Word Ready. And these are free apps that you can install and use to help increase your vocabulary, which will only be helpful when you take IELTS and when you go abroad, either to live or to study. And, if you're looking for books and study guides, we would obviously recommend the official IELTS practice materials that you can buy from Amazon or from our websites. So that's about it. It's been lovely spending this hour with you all. I hope you found something useful. If there's something you liked, tell us in the chat box. Please stay safe and stay well, and hoping to see you all back here for another of our webinars soon. Thank you and goodbye.